Welcome to Relationship Advice. My name is Coulter. I am joined here with my licensed professional best friends, Lauren and Kayla. We are three licensed professional counselors, all about all things relationships. This podcast is dedicated to helping you better connect with the people in your life. And we believe that you have to first better connect with yourself. And in addition to that, we believe that information does not lead to transformation. And so while we hope there's a lot of really great nuggets in this podcast, we have to be putting these things into work in real time and kind of practicing them in that messy, awkward way that relationships roll out. And so we've got a great platform for you to do that. Relationship Academy, which is linked in the show notes. We just posted our course on the 4 pillars of a secure relationship, which we believe is the foundation to having good relationships. And then if you're looking for something just kind of quick and easy to engage with, we've got a free 10-day couples challenge. Shoot us over your email. You get an email in your inbox pretty much right away because of internet magic. And it has some exercises for you and your partner to reconnect over. We just finished up an interview with George Fowler, who is a big hero of ours in the couples therapy world. We're going to get into that in a second. It was incredibly insightful.
So as Coulter mentioned, George Fowler is one of our mentors, one of our role models, especially in the EFT community. For those who are not familiar with George, he is a renowned trainer of couples therapists in EFT, as well as a sought-after supervisor and therapist. He has about 20 years experience working as a police officer and firefighter in New York. Prior to entering the therapy realm, he was a New York firefighter during 9/11, and that has informed a lot of the work that he has done with stress and high conflict and trauma. George teaches therapists how to stay calm and de-escalate high conflict couples. His online training platform, Success and Vulnerability, has trained thousands of therapists, and he travels across the globe, providing tactical skills for couples to create the connections they deserve. We had so many incredible questions for George coming into today's conversation, and I took so many. I'm like glowing from this conversation that we just had.
You do not want to miss this episode. You will see me fangirling over my fellow New Yorker and one of the people who has really influenced my work in EFT.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time talking about the sexual cycle that couples go through, and I really liked his breakdown of that. And so if you and your partner are kind of disconnected in that regard, I think this is a really great episode for you to listen to.
George, welcome to Relationship Advice. We're so excited to chat with you today. How you doing?
Awesome to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great, and we know you're coming in from New York. We were just telling you before we hit play here, we're so excited to chat with you because Kayla and Coulter and I are all big proponents, big lovers of EFT, emotionally focused therapy. It's like our first language on the podcast here, and we look up to a lot of your work. So we're really excited to bring you into the conversation today.
Well, thanks again. I like to tell people we're all in this mess together. It's so much easier to teach it and tell other people what to do until, your family, your relationship, it starts firing at you and all of a sudden it's a whole different ball game. So
that's one of the benefits of being in the therapy world is whenever you're intaking this information about how to help your clients reconnect with each other better, you're kind of secretly taking notes in the back of your head, like, I could maybe benefit from this a little bit.
Yes. George, I am especially happy to be here with you today because on our podcast, we talk a lot about me being from New York as well. And
we don't talk about it. You talk about it.
Okay. All right. Relax. And so it's nice to have a fellow New Yorker on the podcast. And I will just say that I admire a lot of your work because of the ways in which you incorporate, part of our culture into what you do as a therapist. And so I'm super excited to be with you today.
Thank you. And there's so many different ways of getting to the same place, right? It's about finding our own unique style of being present. So New Yorkers can do it. And I go down south and bless your heart. And we all have our influences that, filter how we deliver our message.
For sure.
Absolutely. George, I wanted to actually lead in today by asking you a little bit about your background in New York. You were actually, was it a firefighter and a police officer for like 20 years before you got into the therapy game?
Correct.
Yeah. And you were a firefighter during 9/11 out in New York.
Yep.
Okay. And
So,
I'm
yeah.
so interested to know. Yeah. Like, tell us about that background. How did you move into therapy? What did you bring with you from all of that?
That's a different book I wrote. My first book called Sacred Stress, which is really, I mean, you never know the plan of things, right? I was a firefighter, never wanting to, I was always interested in therapy, but never thought I'd actually work with firefighters. And then 9/11 happened when the New York City Fire Department lost 343 firefighters. So a lot of people I know and work with, and just like that, my world got turned upside down. Everybody was impacted in different ways. But I mean, the weird timing is I had just finished my marriage and family therapy program. And I thought I'd have another 20 years of work before I actually needed to do anything with it. I just did it because I loved the idea of mental health and self-help and all that. And then I was like, wow, wait a second. I was involved doing critical incident stress debriefing. So imagine going to a firehouse that lost 15 firefighters, and you gather the remaining firefighters and you try to help and try to, meet their needs and see what you can do. And, we'd expect all the things like addictions and violence and acting out kids and all the stresses. But what was really interesting for me is marital stress, relationship stress is one of the huge factors you'd expect. And we saw that here too. And yet when they tried to get therapists to work with the couples, there were almost no therapists that wanted to work with the couples. Like, what's the difference between working with an individual versus a couple? That so many therapists were not wanting to see couples. And I think all of us who work with couples know the answer, because there's nothing like a difficult couple to make us not want to work with couples, right? So it was that atmosphere that I was like, wait a second, I am a couples therapist. Nobody's willing to see these couples. And I tentatively said, all right, I'll see them on my day off every Thursday. So that first Thursday, I saw 10 couples. It was a true baptism. I had no idea. Brand new therapist. All the stuff I was trying to get people to listen, active listening, mirroring, like nothing worked. I was like, I'm horrible at this. I want to quit. And it was in that desperation I sent an email out to Sue Johnson. And I said, hey, listen, I need some help. I don't know. I read an article. I loved like EFT's tactics and cycles and patterns. Like my male brain really ate that stuff up as a firefighter too. And so I said, can you help? Send me a tape. And she said, better yet, I will fly out and personally train you. So that's how I started my new career. The first 3 months I had Sue Johnson, Harville Hendricks, and John Gottman all fly out and train me personally. I thought this is how all new therapists started their career.
And I'm like, what did I miss when I graduated? Never occurred to me. Just email Esther Perel and Sue Johnson. And wow.
And it was such an important lesson for me, because it wasn't about egos. I mean, it seems like now it's all about models and polarization, but it was really about the mission, just helping people that are struggling. And there are a lot of different ways to do that. So people were just stepping up to do that. So it was really an informative time in my life to just kind of get that early training.
Wow. Even when you named, a lot of therapists don't want to work with couples. I mean, Kayla and I do so much couples work out here, and I know how different it is working with couples versus individuals. There's so much more energy in the room. There's so much more high conflict that can come into the room. And I have to imagine, even your background working with such high stress and intensity would really have set you up well for like, let's get in, let's do it. Let's just be there with it.
Yeah, it's what's cool about EFT. One EFT therapist got this slow, soft voice, and they get somebody in this place, and then you have me, and I'm very bossy and tactical and missions, and and we all get to the same place. We just do it in a different way.
We call that low fluff versus high fluff therapy. Mm-hmm. And high fluff being the super warm, empathetic, just like, oh my gosh, yes, and you just like, I feel so safe with you. Then the low fluff is like, I'm going to cut through the bullshit and I'm going to tell you. And I think all three of us are kind of on that low fluff side, maybe all four with you on the show.
I warned them coming in today. I said, George is going to be more low fluff. So please don't high fluff him as he comes in. Don't embarrass us.
She said, don't butter you up. Don't be like, oh my God, we're like, look up to you so much. And so I've actually come with a list of criticisms that I'm going to give. I'm going to lead with those. No, actually, I do have a question here. So you mentioned your book, Sacred Stress. And I love the alliteration there. It reminds me of, I had a therapist years ago, this like old, wise, grizzled man. And he would use all similar language. He would say, that it's really kind of a horrible and holy thing, or, you're really blessed and burdened with that. And I always loved that like little alliteration. And so sacred stress fits right in there. But most people listening probably think that sounds kind of backwards. Stress doesn't feel sacred. I've never been like, oh, I'm just in the sacred stress right now. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, there's something redemptive about adversity and challenges, right? And we talk, I don't know if your listeners might have heard the term post-traumatic growth as opposed to post-traumatic stress. That, there's a lot of science behind what happens to people when they actually use the adversity to make changes that makes life more meaningful, purposeful. Their relationships get stronger. Like there are tactical things that we can do that actually increases the quality of engagement in our life. So I would have never thought that happened in 9/11. If you would have said that when it was happening, I probably would have punched you in the face. I mean, I could not have seen it. But afterwards, you see fingerprints and you're like, wow, I can see how my life went in different directions because of actually the challenges that came my way.
I know you spoke to a lot of this in your book, Sacred Stress, but I think in the realm of couples work, I would love to hear you unpack a little bit of this, like how often couples are turning away from each other in stress. Maybe our relationship was solid, but we just entered a more stressful season of life. And now all of a sudden intimacy is gone and we're in all of these negative cycles all the time. And you talk about, can we use the stress to still turn towards each other, to still be connected in that?
I mean, I'm sure you're all familiar with polyvagal theory. I usually explain it to my couples in the first session just so they have better language. And it's like we all go through three brain states, green, yellow, and red, right? So we're in the green brain, we're open, playful, curious, empathetic. All the beautiful stuff happens in the green brain. But when we're threatened, we shift into that yellow brain. That yellow brain is a fight or flight response. What's so fascinating about a yellow brain is our ears shut off. We don't take on the perspective of our partner. We can't give caregiving. We're not empathetic. We're not good partners when our brains are yellow. I don't care how much you love the other person. And that's what stress does. It turns our defensive system on into fight or flight. So I'm really wanting people, we have to honor our nature, right? How we're made, and this ability to fight or flight. And what's the healthy function in anger or walking away? And how do we start discharging some of the power? I know you talk a lot about pursuers and withdrawers, and everybody wants to tell them stop doing this without really helping them understand the good reasons they're doing it and what would be a better option. When we find a better way of dealing with the threat response, we don't need those defensive moves. So, that's really what I'm trying to get people to say. There's nothing wrong with your body getting threatened. It's really a choice of what you do with it. And most people don't have a choice. It moves too fast. I think any good therapy is trying to slow it down, to give them a choice, to say, hey, listen, do you want to deal with it this way, or can you do it differently?
Yeah, and I just want to highlight what George just said for our listeners, because that probably will be something that feels relieving. And that is, there's a really good reason why you're responding in the way that you are. And if we just try to stop our partner from that or stop ourselves from that without first understanding the good reasons and the function, then we're going to probably get even more stuck, right?
We need someone in the relationship to do what you are doing, to watch out for when conflict is getting too high and to slow us down. We need somebody to say, hey, we haven't connected for a while and I want to see our connection increase. It's not always coming out in the cutest way or the most helpful way, but we need someone to do that.
Exactly. And whenever we're threatened, the good news is, and this is the power of attachment theory, that if you could stay with your own experience, that threat response is also going to tell you what you need. It's these unmet needs that drive negative cycles, right? I mean, that's why people protect themselves. They don't feel like what they're hurting or worried about is going to be able to be addressed. So they protect themselves, right? But if you could slow it down, and maybe you can't do it in a moment, but you can do it the next day. That's all the difference between the best and worst couples, is an ability to repair, right? Being able to send a clear signal that says, hey, when I'm angry, it's actually because underneath that, I'm feeling like invisible or not important or feeling small. And in that place is a longing, right? I want to be seen. I want to be special. I want to be wanted. I need your interest. I need your engagement. If we could get people to get to the heart of the problem, that, all of a sudden those negative cycles can become positive. And that's the beauty of, that's the opportunity in stress.
I've listened to some of your podcasts too, George. You and Lori Watson have an incredible podcast where you talk about a lot of these cycles and also integrate that into sex and intimacy. And I think something I love so much about your low fluff style is I hear you, when a couple's in a cycle or it's so live and you're like, but here's the good news is like, there's the need. You're seeing the need, right? Like within the protest. And that is so important to be able to orient ourselves back to, like, if your partner's protesting, they want you to know them. They want you to understand this need. And I think that it gets lost so quickly when we're in the heat of things.
That is so worth repeating. I mean, it is the only reason you're protecting yourself is because of this need. I mean, it is the key. It is the heart of everything. And there's so little talk from partners to each other about it.
Now, you and Lori have also been working really hard at a new book that's coming out this September on the 15th called Brave Love, Great Sex. And I'd love for you to, there it is.
There it is.
You're watching on YouTube.
Yes.
Tune into YouTube, see that cover.
Could you tell us a bit about what inspired you two to write the book and give us a little preview of what the book is about?
Yeah. So I've been doing EFT for over 25 years, and we're really good at helping couples identify their emotional attachment system and, send clearer signals so they can get those needs met. We are not so good, or haven't been so good, at actually talking about the sexual system. And the irony is half the population on this planet finds the primary doorway into connection is through emotional conversations. And the other half finds it through physical touch and the sexual attachment system. There's no right or wrong. They're just different ways. And all of us have better lives when we have access to both of them. So this was what was really cool. When I started researching the original attachment theory, the attachment system consists of three systems. So it's, this emotional attachment need system and a sexual attachment need system. And what both of them are looking for is a caregiving response. That's what kind of completes the system. When the need is met by the response, that's what we call co-regulation. So basically that's what we're all looking for, all the time. And we have not explained really how that happens in the bedroom. And I think as a therapist, so Sue Johnson trained me, and I remember for a lot of couples, when their emotional conversation improved, the sex improved, but not always. And I didn't know what to do with those couples when that didn't happen. So I was in a study group for over 5 years with Esther Perel, Diana Fosha. A few of us would get together in New York, and we would just try to brainstorm and different ways of coming at it and different ideas. And it started becoming clearer and clearer that, hey, wait a second. Not only are they separate cycles and separate systems, but they influence each other. So what do I mean by that? I think a lot of therapists, I was trained to know, if we use like a heterosexual husband's the emotional withdrawer, wife is the emotional pursuer. You talk about that all the time, right? Mm-hmm. That we know if that wife is not having conversations, vulnerable conversations, if there's a lot of distance, that is really going to impact her ability to want to be sexual. Mm-hmm. Right? She needs that connection to feel safe for kind of that erotic energy to turn on, generally. But I don't think we've done the reverse of that, which is just as true. If you're a guy whose primary way into connection is through touch, and that touch is compromised, it's not happening. 20% of couples are not having sex. This is a major problem in relationships. Isn't that going to compromise that husband's ability to want to talk about vulnerable things? It's like when you don't have capacity, when your main way of feeling safe is offline, it super impacts everyday conversations. Mm-hmm. So this book's about trying to provide more balance. It's saying we have these different ways into connection, and we have a term called the MAP, the mutual attachment pattern, which is saying the emotional cycle, which you talk a lot about, and we have a sexual cycle. They're both separate, but really influence each other. And the more that we can zoom out and start saying, hey, wait a second, it's not just what's happening in this conversation. What happened last night is influence in that. I just think it's a much richer, there's so much more to work with then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm just going to slow down what we said because there's so much rich content in here, and I want our listeners to be able to capture it. And that is, there's two cycles at play right? There's our
Yeah.
emotional cycle and there's our sexual cycle. And a lot of times we're in this place where we're saying, well, if our emotional needs are met, that's going to lead naturally to more intimate connection. And I'm doing this with my hands because I'm thinking about that pyramid where it's like there's trust and safety at the bottom, and then at the top is intimacy. But there's a lot of research that supports that that's not how all people are wired. Some people need their intimate and physical touch needs met first to be able to move into that emotional space. So if you're somebody who's listening and you've maybe felt like, gosh, what's wrong with me? Because I can't get into emotion without feeling like my sexual and physical needs are met first. That's really what this book is about, is to create some balance for the people who have a different, or maybe 50% of us, I don't know, who have a different way of meeting our needs for connection.
And it's helpful to pay attention to responsive styles. Like some of us are more responsive and then others initiate. And a lot of times what happens is we switch patterns. So my relationship with my wife, I'm the emotional withdrawer. I will talk if she wants to talk about something, but it's her primary way in. So she initiates more vulnerable conversations than me. I'm more responsive. I'm open to it. But then when it comes to sex, we switch roles. Now I'm the one who initiates, right? And she's the one she's more receptive. She don't might have the same, whatever the reasons for the differences. But the good news for that is what we call a crisscross pattern, is there's actually a lot of common ground. It's like, I don't understand why my wife wants to talk right before bed. To me, it's illogical. I'm like, why have a fight beforehand? Like, I just want to not engage and let's talk about it over the weekend. Right. So I don't get why she gets angry at that when I don't want to engage. All you got to do, that's what empathy is. We have to touch something in ourselves that knows it. Get me into the sexual cycle, and I know what it's like when I want to engage and she rolls over and says, not tonight. Like how my body wants to protest. Like I do exactly what she does, just in a different cycle. We're not that different after all. And I think once we can help couples see that, it's so much easier to start making some progress.
George, I'm wondering if you can speak to this a little bit, because I'm making up a scenario here in my head. I'm imagining some of our dudes who are listening, they've probably already stopped listening because they're like, oh, great. Okay, I just need to get my sexual needs met and then I'm going to be more emotionally available. I'll just go tell her this now. And so can you speak? I know. And that's why hopefully you haven't left yet. Hopefully you haven't started texting your wife and be like, I know what the problem is. I didn't get enough sex and then I'm going to be more emotionally available. So can you speak to that a little bit? How we prevent that from happening? Because I don't think that's what you're saying. They're like, oh guys, if you're feeling disconnected, you're having a little bit more trouble getting emotions online, it's just because you're undersexed. So can you speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, first of all, it makes sense. If you look at a lot of way men are raised, that they don't have a lot of success with emotions. They get a lot of training to turn it off and focus on their performance, right? So if you're not having success with emotions, it makes sense why touch becomes an easier doorway into connection. And then you throw testosterone in there, and it speeds up that process. So I don't want men to apologize, because I do think they oftentimes get, put into this category. All they want is an orgasm, and people actually miss the heart behind it. It is so much more than an orgasm. It's how they feel safe, seen, interest. It's a huge, and I don't want men to have to apologize that that's their primary doorway in. But actually, what this book is about, it's encouraging both partners to grow the part of them that hasn't been grown. Right. So it's like, why would men just settle for connection through touch if they could learn in places of fear and struggle that they can receive co-regulation in that? Like their lives improve when they learn how to speak that language. And a lot of men, as they get older and their penis isn't as dependable, and, they have to develop these strategies. Like there's more than life than just the physical. Right. And so I think that this is a cry out to them to be like, why sell for a life of just touch when you can have so much more? But the flip side of that is also true. For so many women, I'm not trying to get them to have more sex for their husband. I want them to say what has happened to them. There's good reasons to say no to sex that doesn't feel good. And it's the healthiest thing that we can do. But so many women I work with tell me, like, I'd be totally fine if we never had sex again. And part of me wants to cry. I'm like, how, like, this beautiful way into connection, it fills the tank. Like, how have we lost it because of all the pressure and all the, doing it for someone else? I mean, it's a loving thing to do, to give your body to somebody else, but it trains your body not to want to have sex. So this is more of a fight for them to say, like, hey, wait a second, let's re-engage. EFT is trying to get to withdraw to re-engage. If it's emotional or sexual, that re-engagement is an assertion of self. It's trying to kind of make more room for you to have more vitality in your relationship and your own lives.
Yeah, you just started answering the question that had been formulating in my brain. I mean, when you were describing, a lot of men haven't grown up with the language of emotion, right? And the emotional connection as that primary input for being seen and connected to and nurtured. And so then my brain, of course, started thinking like, yeah, and then what's happening for women on the other end, where the way that they're being raised, the way that they're growing up, I think it gets talked about a lot that women get more of the emotional literacy and connection. But I think what doesn't get talked about as much is like what happens for women then with sex and with physical intimacy. And so, I mean, you were just starting to unpack, like, some of it is women have so much pressure on them and sense that, like, I have to give and I have to do and I have to perform. And so then they can kind of enter into a sexual cycle as like, you just want something from me instead of I get something from this.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if me and my wife have a fight, about the kids, and I walk away, and then 3 hours later, we would jump in bed and I reach over and touch her shoulder, which is my sexy way of saying, hey, what do you think tonight? Like, that's a setup for failure for her. She's not been able to repair the emotional stuff. Her body's probably pretty disconnected and tense. There's no foreplay. There's no talk. There's no conversation. And I'm expecting her body to go right from one moment of touch, because my body can get turned on that quickly. We have different bodies, different hearts, different brains. And I think a lot of men don't understand those differences and how safety is important. How, Laurie often talks about women often need a minimum of 20 minutes to kind of transition from, this kind of racing brain and all the chore list and to do things, to get in the body more relaxed. I mean, great lovers are relaxed. I mean, that's Peggy Kleinplatz does this amazing work, and she's interviewed great lovers all over the world. She endorsed that book. It was a great honor. But, we know the science says great lovers, what they do. They're good communicators. They're vulnerable. They're empathetic. They're curious. They're playful. They can take risks, right? All these, they're relaxed, which is so different than when you look at most couples and talk about their sex life, right? There's pressure, there's stress, they're worried, is it going to work? I mean, one of my main things, too, about this book is we've been seeing the problem as individual problems, like you having trouble maintaining an erection, or she has low libido. Like, they cause each other. These are relationships issues. If you keep having sex for someone else, not for yourself, guess what? Your libido is going to go down. Yeah. If you keep trying to have sex and somebody keeps rejecting you time after time, your body's going to start having issues with that. I mean, these are relational problems, not just intrapsychic issues.
We're talking right now, like, kind of the more typical way the sexual cycle might show up with the male pursuer and female withdrawer. But I know that that's not always how it goes, right? Yeah. Sometimes the female is more of the pursuer and the male is more of the withdrawer. And so I guess first I want to name that for our listeners, because there might be somebody out there who's like, what? My husband is emotionally withdrawing and sexually withdrawing, and I'm doing all of the work, and I can't get him to, pay attention to me in any areas of our marriage. And it kind of brought up this other question for me in that, like, I guess there's two parts of it. Is there anything different that we're doing for couples who are in that position? Maybe I'll start there, and then I have a part two to my question.
Yeah, that's what we call a parallel process, where the person is the same position in both cycles. And you know what? There's more distance. That's a harder couple to work with. The other person's strategy when they're not feeling safe is like a foreign language. It's like another country, another world. So yeah, I just think to set expectations, it's a little bit harder. So, and you're right, a lot of couples switch roles, don't switch roles, heterosexual, gay couples. I mean, however people identify, there's so many different combinations, but there's always a pattern. There is always a pattern. And again, the good news is if you can identify patterns, you can start changing them. So if you're in a relationship where your partner's a double withdrawer, it sets you up to protest all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And your protest is constantly sending the message that they're doing something wrong. And their body's way of dealing with messages that they're failing is to take space, to get away from it, because that feels safer than staying engaged. Like, that's the definition of insanity. They keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. I mean, both partners need a new move to create a new cycle. And that's really what we're trying to help couples see.
Yeah. And the first thing that I heard you say is like, hey, this actually is a little bit more challenging for this sort of relationship, because when it's, I'm a sexual pursuer, but I'm an emotional withdrawer, then at least I have the ability to then take perspective for my partner, because at some point I'm in that position.
Yep.
But when it's that I'm a parallel process, I'm a pursue and sex and emotion, then we really don't have as much understanding or ability to take perspective in the same way, because it's just such a different experience through and through. So
Exactly.
I think that's a good thing to name for people. And that doesn't mean you can't work through that, right? It just means that there is some validity to the fact that that's a little bit harder.
Yes. And the good news is, even if you can't figure out the patterns and the protection's different, the vulnerability, the hurt underneath, and the needs and the longing are the same.
Yeah.
Humans
so
have
once you figure out one, it's like now you've got the recipe for the other.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I love that.
I want to not overcomplicate this. I mean, every couple, if they slow down, could actually learn to put words to what they're threatening them and ask for help. And if you can get your partner's help, I guarantee you, your nervous system is going to experience the power of co-regulation instead of isolation, which is a much better way of dealing with threat.
It's such you keep using this language. It's been said so many times by all of us, I think, but the words slow down. And most people are wanting it to stop. Like, we need this to stop. And every time it comes online, then we're like, oh, game over, the problem's back here. But I just want to reiterate this to people so it's not getting lost. The goal here is to slow things down, is not to never have the cycle happen again. Just slow it down.
And how we slow it down matters. I think if you're a pursuer and you're super pissed off because your partner keeps walking away, telling them to slow it down is like chalk, on the board. It's that. So we got to be able to match that affect, to be able to say, yeah, so I get your frustration. Like, here you are again, trying to get your partner engaged, and your partner walks away. And it's like, are you kidding me? I mean, how are things ever going to get better when your partner keeps walking away? I think we want to connect first before we start kind of getting people to stretch and do it a little bit differently. So that's like the favorite line that EFT therapists slow things down. But I work with a lot of escalated couples, and I don't use those words because it's so hard for somebody to slow down when they're activated. So how do I meet them in that activation to honor that fight response, which is trying to get attention from us?
Kayla, do you still remember the part 2 of your question?
I do. I was trying to be generous, but I'm ready for it.
I don't want to derail it.
Okay, great. This is like another kind of variation of this sexual cycle. And you had mentioned it before that one person might be more in like the initiator role with sex, and one person might be more in the responding role.
Yep.
And I have lots of couples who get extra frustrated because they're both in the responsive role. They're waiting for the other person to initiate. And so I'm just curious if if there's anything in the book or anything that you've learned that's helpful for those types of cycles where it's like nobody really wants to put the vulnerability out there to initiate. Even if they want sex, it just feels harder to get to that place.
Yeah, it's trying to be curious about what's blocking this natural process. You're talking about withdraw. Neither partner is initiating. 20% of couples are not having sex. This is a real big issue all over the place. So, and a lot of couples don't grow up in families talking about sex. So they don't know how to repair because they don't know how to have the conversation. And if every time you have the conversation leads to a fight, you wind up not having a conversation, which is why this is so prevalent. Right. So I think it is starting off with, can you be curious and have a conversation? In my office, I have these hats, the blue hat and the red hat.
Yes.
I'm really trying to help couples have success and pick a mission, like one of them's got to talk about what they're, I know they're both struggling at the same time, but we can only do one mission at a time. One's got to be able to talk about, what their struggle is, and what they're trying to get is the other partner's caregiving response, to give this space, to be curious about that. When the other partner can't, because both of them are protesting for the same time, nothing successful happens. So again, I think it's trying to set couples up for success with communication, right? To understand why it's not working, and more importantly, what they can do differently.
That actually leads into one of the questions that I wanted to bring to this conversation, because I think that is a lot of the work we as therapists are helping our couples to do in the office. Like, how do we put language to some of these conversations? And George, I heard you name, a lot of people, especially here in our American Western culture, just have not grown up with language modeling, education. I mean, I've facilitated, groups here at our practice in Phoenix, going through Emily Nagoski's work, Come As You Are. And I've had, groups of women into their 50s and 60s, and all of them are like, I did not know the word vulva. Like, I don't know the anatomical terms for all of the anatomy, in the pelvic region. And so when couples maybe are coming in, or they're having a hard time going to that curiosity because they just don't have the words, or maybe they start to get the words, but then it's like, I feel awkward. Like, I feel like a kid sitting here trying to like, what is like, I don't know if I want to tell you what I want. Like, how do you recommend that people get some reps, do some practice? Like, it's so valid,
That's what books like this are for. I mean, psych ed is important to get good information when you don't have any information. I mean, the reason I did started the podcast with Lori, and she came to one of my trainings, is, I heard that, over 80% of women don't have an orgasm through intercourse. And I was like, what? How is that even possible? I mean, every man thinks if it's not happening, they're failing. Every woman thinks something's wrong with her. It's like, and it's anatomically not built to do it that way. I mean, so like some basic, that takes a lot of pressure off. I was like, this should be like a presidential announcement. Like the world should know, like there are easier ways. If you want your female partner to have an orgasm, like, a vibrator, oral sex, there are things that will work better than that. Like, it's not the only way. Like, this is basic information. And I think you're right, because we don't grow up talking about this. A lot of us have bad information, and that bad information informs what we do, and it forms negative cycles, and we don't know how to talk about it. So we keep being stuck in these negative places when just basic good information can alleviate a lot of that.
I'm hearing you say it's like needing some of the education. We need to get some of the information. We need to get some of the language. And then how about the piece? I don't know if this maybe ties into like, is this attachment? Is this developmental? Like the piece of, okay, maybe I have the language, but it still just feels awkward to talk. And so there's something where it's like I've had couples who are like, I could text about it, but I can't like sit and talk, or like with the therapist helping, I can go there when there's like that facilitator, but at home, it just feels like so childlike and awkward, and then that's not sexy. And so I don't want to do that, because it's like not sexy to try to have that conversation when I feel like a kid.
Yeah, there's no shortage of reps. We all need reps. I mean, I've been doing the emotional cycle for 25 years. I'm really fluent in it. I have a lot of words. I've been doing the sexual cycle for 10 years. I feel clumsy, and I'm 10 years of practice and talking about this, and I still am, so yes, for people brand new that grew up in families not talking about it, like their brains are like, yes, I want to talk about it. And then they find themselves in this space and they go, oh, and nothing comes out because they've had so much training not to talk about it.
Yes.
Again, so just to have a lot of grace for ourselves. Like, this is hard work, but if you keep practicing, you'll get to a place of more fluidity.
In the book, is there like a glossary of terms that people can reference, or they could like point to on the page, like that? I like that one.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot of information there. We borrow from the work of Emily Nagoski. I think that's very helpful. Gas pedals and brakes. So often people think they don't have desire when they have plenty of desire. They just have too many brakes. I mean, eliminating brakes is probably more helpful than even identifying gas pedals. So just having that language, helping people find something to talk about. Like, people want to have these conversations, but they don't know what to say. And that's why I think they need some information so they can feel some stability in a conversation to hold on to.
I even just want to name, because I think this ties in when you were talking about, George, like this crisscross pattern. where it can be like, well, I need emotional intimacy to feel safe to engage in sexual intimacy. And then we hear from the other partner, well, I need sexual intimacy in order to feel safe to engage. And so there's like this standoff that happens.
Yep.
And I think it's so easy to just go to this binary, like, well, somebody's just going to have to choose to be unsafe first and hope that that helps. But then they'll probably feel resentful because, versus being able to actually get into like, okay, instead of one of us saying, I'm going to transgress my own needs for safety and just go first to meet your needs, we're saying, actually, we need to bring more language. We need to have more curiosity about what does this need meet for you and what does this feel like, and help me understand it. And when we don't have the language to do that, it makes sense that we're getting really stuck.
That's beautiful how you said it. I mean, the sexual conversation has a ton of vulnerability in it. It's okay not to want to have sex you don't want to have, but it's not okay not to talk about that. Right? You owe it to each other to have a conversation that's honest and real and authentic. And I don't want to limit. That's why I don't like the language of the sexual cycle, because it just leaves it to the sex and the orgasm and minimizes it. It's so much more this physical cycle. I mean, when sex gets shut down, touch gets shut down, affection gets touched down, outside just holding hands, all these little things that are hugely important to filling up the tank, they all start to disappear, right? So yes, if you don't want to have sex with your partner, can you still kind of give your partner a hug? Can you still, hold your partner's hand? Can you do things or talk about what's stopping you from wanting to do those things? To me, as long as a couple's talking about it, I'm good to go. It's when they refuse to talk about it that they're in trouble.
Well, and the best thing that I'm hearing from all this is like, we have to make it make sense. Like, something is happening here, and that's the first stop. We're not trying to move in immediately to change and just like, okay, well, too bad. You've got to jump in the bed and have sex now. It's like, we've got to make it make sense why we're in a standoff here and what's happening between us before we can even decide what to do differently.
Yes, this book is definitely not trying to pressure people to get into bed. That's the worst thing that we could do. There's too much pressure. We're trying to create an environment of safety where there isn't pressure, so your attachment systems can do what they're designed to do. It is hard to love, but it's actually harder to not love. It takes more work to protect ourselves and do all these things. So once you can free up these blocks and these breaks, the system will do what it's designed to do.
Well, and I'm even just going to double click on something you said a while back, that you said great lovers are relaxed, and we use the language window of tolerance. You were talking about polyvagal theory. We really overlay those two in the podcast. We talk about being in your window, connected to that ability to be curious and playful and creative and sensual and take risks. And so I think that's the place where, when Coulter had asked that question earlier of like, we don't just want the men or the women really to hear that like, well, you just got to go have sex because that will be the way in. It's like, no, we're trying to have conversations that help us understand, that help us get into that window so that we can feel more relaxed and more playful and more creative together.
And that's the invitation to some of your female listeners. Like, you love vulnerable conversations. It's the thing that makes you feel most connected. Yet you have an opportunity for vulnerable conversations in the bedroom and you're not taking it, right? Why are you not speaking about these parts of you that are scared, that are threatened? Like this superpower that you have, you're no longer using. Like, I want to be curious about that. Like, what stops you from doing what you love doing, which is sharing vulnerable, clear signals?
Yeah. I wonder, George or Kayla, I wonder if you guys could maybe give some examples. Like, what are some of the things that couples might actually break down and talk about, just so our listeners who are maybe like, yes, I want to do this, but again, I don't have the language. I don't know what to ask. I don't know what to look for. Like, what are some of the things that might get broken down in those conversations?
Kayla can jump in afterwards. We have in a book called Best Sex Talk that is a very thorough, questionnaire that partners can talk to each other. What turns them on, what turns off their body, their emotions, their thoughts, their history. There's just so many elements that just trying to give people the information is, I think, the first critical piece, and then they can do what they naturally will do with it.
And I think, just to add there, like, going back to what we were talking about before, like, can you get curious with yourself? Like, what position are you in your physical or sexual cycle? And why does it make sense that you're there? What is happening for you? If you're the pursuer, what is behind that, right? When you see me initiating and then I get super frustrated when you're not, saying yes, and I feel really rejected, and you see me get bigger there, well, what's really happening underneath that, right? And when I'm saying no, not tonight, no, not tonight, and I'm avoiding sex, why? What's happening there for you? And I think we have to be able to ask ourselves those questions in order to then teach our partner, just like we talk about a lot on our podcast. It's like something is happening for me that's different than what's happening for you. And that's really the first step in this work, is like, can we own that? Can we understand it for ourselves so that we can then bring that to our partner and start some discussion here? Before we take any action steps, the action is, can I get curious with myself? And then can I share that with my partner?
I love the curiosity. I mean, Curious George, if I have a superpower, it's that. And again, that's the invitation to your listeners. Like, if you're curious about why does your partner walk away and not engage, and you get so frustrated, can you get curious when you do exactly the same thing? Right? Because we are so much similar than we are different. I mean, in a cycle, it seems like this other person is like from Mars, right?
Yeah.
But they're actually doing something that you probably know in a different way. And to me, that's the beauty of using both systems to help us find that common ground, to touch something in ourselves that does know, why we get angry or why we roll over. And once we can find that empathy, that's green brain, right? We're getting pulled out of this yellow defensiveness, and we have more now capacity, window of tolerance stuff.
I am just thinking about how many times I've had couples or even individuals come into my office, and that because of the limitations to what education they have and what they currently know, it goes so fast to like, oh, well, I don't want to have sex, so I just have to go get my hormones tested, and I just have to get on some kind of hormone, right? Or, well, you don't want to have sex, so you must just have low testosterone. It goes so fast to like, there's something wrong with you, and it's only a biological thing. So just go to the doctor and get that biological thing looked at, or go to a physical therapist and get that tension worked out. And I really, really want people to hear us say, like, that's not what we're saying to be curious about, right? We're saying, like, if you don't have the language, just know that it is out there, that you can get a lot of it in George and Lori's new book. You can get a lot of it in Emily Nagoski's work. But it's really more being able to look at like, yeah, I don't feel relaxed and open to being playful and taking risks when I've had kids all over my body all day, and I've been thinking about the next size diapers that we have to buy, and the fact that the dishes are still dirty, and that the house smells like trash, and that I don't feel like I have enough help, and I haven't had an adult conversation with somebody. My system is so high stress that it's not actually just I'm tired and I don't have libido. It's like I need to be able to unpack the things that are hitting those breaks in my system.
It's one of the gifts of EFT. I mean, there's power in externalizing the problem as the cycle instead of each other, right? When you think it's just your problem, it's so different than saying, hey, we have a system in place that sets both of us up to not be the best versions of ourselves. It's that cycle's fault. And, and you all talk a lot about this, but when couples start uniting, it really sets the stage for those new conversations to be able to kind of help each other. What's so sad is when you're giving these examples, people are stressed out, and then they're blamed because their body won't respond when it can't possibly respond. And then they believe it's their fault on top of it, which just makes more stress and more pressure. And we wonder why people drown in these holes when the system in place puts them there. So I love that language that you're saying. It's like, Joy, grab your partner's hand and just kind of help each other out of this tough spot that you're in.
And, just to add one more resource for developing some language, we had mentioned this briefly before, but George and Lori also have this podcast, Brave Love, Great Sex. And George, you probably don't know this, but I play an excerpt from your podcast where you guys are role playing in my Hold Me Tight workshop every time, because it's such great content, and it's real life examples of how this shows up to normalize how challenging this is, and then what we can do differently. And so there's another great resource here, and especially if you're wondering, hey, will I like this book? You can go check out an episode from their podcast to hear, what each of them sounds like, so you can get a little bit more of like a preview, right, of what this book is going to be like.
Well, that's good to hear. You do these things, you never know if
I know.
anyone's listening, as you all know, but it's the hope is still, it's so much easier to give advice when you're not triggered. I could be the best couple in the world when I'm in a green brain.
Yes.
The real challenge is not blaming each other. We all get into these defensive states. It's like, how do we get the help we need to get out of them?
Yeah, I was literally just joking with Coulter and Kayla last week. I had a small cycle with my husband, and it's like I was so tired. Like that was really the heart of it. And we were sitting there, and it was like, okay, so are we not talking tonight? Well, nope, I guess we're not. The kids are asleep and we have time to ourselves, but I guess we're just choosing to like not have any quality time tonight. So we'll just stay in a standoff. And my husband's like, so we're choosing that. We're choosing to do that. And I can like hear my therapist brain in the background being like, Lauren, could you like take a breath and like have a more vulnerable conversation? And I'm like, nope, can't do it. So it's just so real, you know?
Well, it's so important because I think sometimes we make this stuff sound too easy, and it can be hard. It can
It's
be
messy.
hard. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I think we always try to do on our podcast. I know that you do as well, George, and that is like we're also humans. We are all therapists who practice this model, and we also are humans in relationships, and relationships are really hard. So give yourself some grace as you're trying to work through this part of your relationship. George, before we wrap up,
Yep.
I wanted to just see if there's anything else that you wanted to make sure that our listeners take away from today's episode, and if you could also let them know where they can find the book.
Yeah, great. I mean, sometimes I think we can get too serious too as therapists. Always focus on what's wrong, and I think it's so inspiring to see love in action when people kind of take risks and show up, and when that need gets met by a response. I mean, there's nothing more electric and alive than that. And, that I just think I get the privilege as a therapist to see that. And this book is written for couples to have those conversations, to kind of recognize love is stronger than fear and negative cycles. We just got to give it the space to do its thing. And then kind of when it does, it has such a powerful ripple effect, right? It doesn't just change your dynamics. It changes your kids' lives, your grandkids' life. I mean, it's so profound what love can do when it's in action. So, people can find it in Amazon or, it's Penguin's publishing it anywhere else. I did just come out with an Instagram, which I've never done my whole life either.
Yes.
But my son just graduated. So he's like, Dad, I want to do your Instagram. I was like, whatever, here you go. So like, there's another area now we're playing around with, but I've been surprised by just the ability to do what we're doing here. Just riff, have some fun, talk about the mess we're all in, and hopefully we learn some lessons.
Yes. And for our listeners, we will link George's Instagram with ours, right? So maybe we'll do a little collab so that you can find his Instagram if you're interested in that. This is George Fowler. And we are so grateful for the conversation that we had with you today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, y'all. Blessings.